Another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco, and today we're breaking down the top QB tight end streamers and notable RB flex plays for Week 8. Join us for all the insight and more on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel, starting right now. And joined once again by the one and only Derek Favret. By the way, Derek, double dipping this week, by the way. Appreciate Derek being on yesterday, hosting the waiver wires and trades, making sure Matthew Styles and Jefferson are on the ball. We do appreciate it, but he's back again on Wednesday. Derek, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Yeah, love it. 2 nights in a row, getting ready for another week of fantasy football. Gotta love it.
Now, Derek, you've been the mastermind behind a lot of the stuff we've been doing at Razzball. If people haven't checked in on our weekly Wednesday show over the last few weeks, we kind of break down the most notable streamers and then a couple flex plays, but using the tools at Razzball to see, hey, is there anything we're missing? Because sometimes the matchup is great, but there's other things we should be looking at every single week. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you got to go check out the tools over on Razzball.com. If you go to football.razzball.com, you click on the fantasy data tab. We have everything from the slot versus wide, points per game allowed tool, over down to the home versus road, wins versus loss splits. These are fun tools to help you set your lineups every single week. So go check it out on Razzball.com and make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. We also have a podcast. If you are on the go and you want to listen to us on the road, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well at Razzball Fantasy. And finally, make sure you go to football.razzball.com for all the great content we got from all our great writers over there. It has been a fantastic run this season, a lot of fun so far. And of course, make sure you join us every Sunday live for 2 hours before kickoff as we do all our start, sit, questions, Q&A. It's a lot of fun. We do injury updates and weather updates. And honestly, we pride ourselves on having the most up-to-date information, really help you find the edge, setting your lineups every single week. Epic Fail joins us once again. Epic Fail, always appreciate you being on. Love having you here. Today, we're going to be talking about some Week 8 streamers and flexes. Before we get into that, there is some big breaking news. And, of course, that's DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to the Chiefs. And every single time one of these trades happen, I think to myself, like, wow, does every NFL team not like having good players for a fifth-round pick? Like, it just blows my mind. Like, every single time, these guys always seem to go for a value. And sure enough, the Chiefs, again, with no Rashid Rice, no Marquise Hollywood Brown for the foreseeable future, they have their new number one. Derek, what's your first reaction to it?
Yeah, well, my first reaction is Hopkins has a lifeline. Gets him on a team that actually could use him as a quarterback and get him the ball. I'm really curious if we're going to see kind of a resurgence or rebirth of D-Hop. He's been pretty brutal, all year and even last year for much of the year. So it's good to see him move on. And of course, the Chiefs really need the help. And, I'm really wondering, are we going to see Mahomes be Mahomes again now that he's got some weapons? So it'll take a few weeks to sort out. Hopkins still hobbling a little bit, but once he gets in there, gets a little bit healthier, learns the playbook, we'll see if they can form a chemistry real quick, and if they do, then you're probably sitting on a gold mine if you have them.
Yeah, I mean, in shallow leagues, I've seen him getting scooped up in free agency. You got 10-team leagues where he was a free agent. I do think he is someone that is going to immediately become a valuable wide receiver 2/3. Like there's no doubt that Patrick Mahomes is going to figure out a way to use DeAndre Hopkins. I think Andy Reid was also going to be able to use DeAndre Hopkins, and it's not like Marquise Hollywood Brown and or Rashid Rice are coming back for fantasy football regular season. Yeah, they might come back for the NFL playoffs, but that's not going to happen for the fantasy football season. So to be honest with you, I want Patrick Mahomes' number one option. I really do. Travis Kelce has not been that guy this season. They're probably saving him, but they got to remember the Chiefs are 6-0. So it ain't pretty. We don't love it for fantasy, but I think if you're a Patrick Mahomes owner, you got to feel a lot more confident knowing that when you have an alpha number one, the rest of those receivers now fit better into their roles. So I got to say, even with Juju going to be out for the next few weeks, a little pressure off for Travis Kelce should help. On the flip side, though, the Tennessee Titans, I think it does kind of, does open things up a little bit for guys like Calvin Ridley, where you're not going to be dealing with like another really good outside receiver. But it feels like Nick Westbrook-Akine scores the touchdowns every week for some reason. Like every time I look over at the Tennessee Titans game, it's Nick Westbrook-Akine scoring the touchdown. So I'm sure that'll keep happening. But as long as Will Levis is the quarterback for the Titans, it's going to be hard to trust Calvin Ridley, but I do think it gives him a bump there. Any thoughts about the Tennessee Titans situation without Hopkins?
Yeah, and I agree. And in fact, I'm hoping that we see a little resurgence in Boyd as well. Yeah, he just really went there and he just kind of disappeared. We really probably halfway forget that he's on the Titans. So yeah, maybe I hope opens up both for Ridley and Boyd. That would be helpful for, especially in very deep leagues and in the coming weeks with the bye weeks, the major bye weeks hit. You're going to be counting on guys like Ridley and Boyd, and yeah. So if this helps them become at least flex plays, then we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think the other thing will say this too is we have seen maybe that helps guys like Tony Pollard get a few more targets. I think Tyler Boyd becomes a little bit interesting in deeper formats. This week he has a pretty nice slot matchup, but honestly, it's always been Will Levis for me. Like he just way too streaky, can't make the easy throws. Honestly, I don't mind having I'm more open to stashing a Calvin Ridley on my bench. But to be honest with you, I'm not starting them until I see some consistency from those guys. You can't go 8 targets, no receptions, and be excited about starting a player. All right, Lindorphins, sure. We got you on here, man. We promise we'll get to you. Waiver wire question. I mean, listen, Lindorphins, I guess you're a little late to the party, but the guys are already done here. If you have Kyren and Walker, would you prefer Corum or Cabernet as your RB bench stash? Half PPR if that matters. Thanks. This is a really tough one. I honestly, I would say Walker has been oddly banged up over the last year or two, and Charbonnet has gotten his opportunities. I honestly think Ronnie Rivers will be a little more involved. So I think Charb might be the guy I would choose here. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, same for me. Charbonnet's been, in a deeper league, and I have him in a very deep league, and I've had to play him really just out of necessity, and he does fine. He's not obviously not getting the bulk of the work, but he gets, second running back points, which helps stabilize you if you need it. So, yeah, I don't have any problem with Charbonnet. We really haven't seen much out of Corum, and, are we going to? I mean, Kyren has been just a monster, and
sweet baby boy.
The Rams need everything they can get. So I don't see them changing that at all, frankly. Charbonnet would be the one here to stash.
Epic fail. Another waiver wire question. This one about Juwan Jennings. I do think that you need to take a season-long outlook with Jennings. This is not just a weekly thing. Even if he misses this week, after watching him drop 40 against the Rams like a month ago when he was filling in for, I think it was Debo, or I don't remember at this point.
Yeah,
it was Debo.
Yeah.
Like, the 49ers offense is crazy efficient. And so getting that number 2 wide receiver role locked in, honestly, I think he makes Jennings an intriguing wide receiver 3 rest of season. So I don't think I'm overly concerned about this week specifically. This is a season-long pickup. What's your thoughts, Derek?
Absolutely agree. Obviously you want him this week if he's healthy enough to play, but he's got the hip injury. You're looking long-term, because we know Ayuk's not coming back. We will see Debo, if not this week, certainly next week. And then Jennings should be right there, like you said, the number 2. So, yeah, you're looking beyond this week. If he plays and contributes, then that's great. But, you need to set yourself up for the long term now, with all these wide receiver injuries. And so, yeah, look beyond this week.
Yeah. All right. Let's get in the door. So, by the way, you're welcome. By the way, I love that. You know what? I appreciate you, man. Honestly, all right, enough of this waiver wire talk, boys. Let's get in there on Tuesday. Jeff, I know Sky skipped yesterday. God forbid he shows up for work these days, but doesn't mean that the rest of you guys could skip. Tuesday's show, Matthew Stiles does a lot of hard work. He goes through all these crazy statistical backgrounds to find the best waiver wires every week, and then you don't even show for his show? I mean, guys, I'm super disappointed. Honestly, always kidding, of course. I'd much rather have you here with me anyway. it makes me feel good that you're here with me. So it gives me someone to talk to other than Derek all the time. It's unbelievable. All right.
That's right.
Let's get into QB streamers. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the tools on Razzball, we always recommend you do so. Really, today's show is we obviously all know the matchups. We all can go to any fantasy website and find out, oh, this team allows this much fantasy points to a QB and this fantasy. But sometimes we want to make sure that there isn't anything else we should be looking at when we stream guys who typically aren't QB1s. Because technically, if you're streaming a quarterback, it means they're not a QB1, which means that we shouldn't expect QB1 numbers every single week. So I have always asked Derek to dive into the numbers, to look on the back end, to make sure that these streamers in plus matchups don't have any flaws. We use our home versus road split tool, the win versus loss tool. We have the slot versus wide. We have a bunch of tools on Razzball that Derek dives in for us and tells me if these streamers and flexes are worth it. Let's talk about QB streamers. The first one I want to cover today is Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins is kind of a borderline QB1, but if you look at Kirk Cousins' season, it's basically one game. He had one absolutely monster game where he dropped 40 points a few weeks ago. The rest of the time, he's been kind of okay, nothing crazy. But this week, he gets the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, the Bucs offense is going to be going through a complete change with no Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin this week. The matchup is very good against that Tampa Bay defense, who, by the way, just seems to allow a lot of fantasy points. So what's your thoughts here? Second most fantasy points allowed this season by the Bucs D, 2 quarterbacks. What's your thoughts, Derek? Is there anything in the numbers that says we should fade Kirk Cousins?
No. And in fact, you mentioned one game. Well, who did he play in that one game? He played the Bucs. 500 yards plus 4 touchdowns versus the Bucs last time out. So, no, I did. I looked through the numbers, our win-loss, and he's really pretty balanced between wins and losses, same open road as well. So there's really nothing glaring that I'm seeing to push me off of this, where we've got some recent numbers to suggest that, the Bucs are having trouble with Kirk Cousins, or maybe vice versa. He did play in Minnesota, played the Bucs a lot. He knows the scheme, knows a lot of the players. No, I didn't see anything that tells me Kirk Cousins is not a streamer this week. You're on mute, Bobby. Yeah.
Jesus, I'm trying my best to eliminate that background noise for so everyone can hear Derek's awesome takes.
That's right.
And then, of course, I look like an ass every time when I do that. So, but yeah, I think this is for me where now are they home or on the road?
Let me pull that up real quick.
Because I think the other thing I want to know is Cousins doesn't really necessarily be impacted by home road splits.
No,
but
he's really not.
But he's on the road in Tampa this time, so
yes.
It will be outdoors.
Yep.
I think the upside of whatever he did last time is probably not realistic. Plus, the Bucs offense, we don't really know what it's gonna look like. If you remember that game too, Baker threw for like 180 yards and like 3 short touchdowns. I don't know if that's going to be the same game flow, but at the same time, I think this is definitely okay to stream there as well. Let's jump down. Let's get a little deeper. The next one is not a guy that we feel too great about. Maybe not the greatest NFL quarterback right now. It's Bo Nix but he gets the Carolina Panthers. And boy, oh boy. I mean, the Panthers this season are starting to – they are one of the most banged up teams. And if you come to our Sunday show, I go through the injury report, and man, oh man, do they have a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Now you can gouge them on the ground. We'll talk about Javonte in a little bit, but the Broncos will be at home this week. The Panthers allow the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Derek, is there anything in the numbers that says that Bo Nix might not be the best option?
Yeah, well, it's a small sample size, but our home road split for Nix shows that he's 36% better at home. And the big thing that I pick up is his rushing. He's got 136 yards rushing total in the last 2 games. And the Panthers, certainly they're trimming down their roster. I noticed they either cut or traded some folks earlier today. So they're going to be limping into Denver. This one's ripe for the taking for Nix for his growth. And Epic Fail, he was there last night with us. So he heard me talk about Bo Nix, and he's actually as far as waivers go, he was one of my suggestions for a quarterback to stash last night in our waiver talk would be Bo Nix. And I like this matchup this weekend versus the Panthers.
So let's talk about some of the guys that might be like, is Baker Mayfield, with all the injuries to his wide receivers, someone you would sit for a guy like a Bo Nix streamer?
So actually I would, I think you could really make a case that, we're not really sure. Yes, certainly Baker is a volume passer, but is it going to be Kate Otten? Is it going to be McMillan? Is it going to be, Sterling? Who's it going to be? We don't know. So
Sterling
I don't
Shepard.
mind. What's that?
Sterling Shepard warms my heart.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard. Yeah, exactly. So, who's it going to be? We really don't know how this new look Buccaneers team's going to be. And, if you don't, especially 2 quarterback lead for your super flex, I mean, Nix is actually a pretty good risk reward play because he doesn't pass for a lot, but he supplements it with the rushing, and he's got 2 ways to get touchdowns. So I would actually sit Baker for Bo Nix this week.
What about, we have a question from Epic Fail here, Bo Nix versus Carolina or Anthony Richardson versus Houston. Then he's also got Geno, Buffalo.
Yeah, I think we talked about, I think he asked us this question last night, and we all said to stay away from Geno, just frankly because of the fact that DK probably won't play. For me, my answer was Bo Nix on this one. I think, maybe he might have asked for Russell Wilson as well. Maybe Russell Wilson was an option too last night, but. In this case, I would play Nix. I think the matchup is good. Again, I'm looking for him to supplement his, maybe lower passing numbers with rushing yardage and possibly a rushing touchdown. So I'm okay going with Bo Nix over A-Rich on this one.
I'm going to go Anthony Richardson of these guys. The Houston defense doesn't scare me. They're dealing with some injuries too. The other thing is, like, CJ Stroud will be back at home after a couple weeks on the road without Nico Collins. And he is one of the home road split guys where he plays a lot better at home. So I think he's going to have a decent game against the Colts. And I think Anthony Richardson, someone that I want to play in that game. So I would go Anthony Richardson myself. All right.
That's fair.
Let's jump down to the last one. And boy, oh boy. And listen, I shouldn't say I'm excited because, listen, hey, I'm sorry that you tore your Achilles and, Deshaun Watson, that's a tough situation. That is not great. We don't like to see guys get hurt. But, it was brutal to watch him play football. It's not there anymore. And the Browns are just riding the wave all the way into the ground no matter what. And then sure enough, this happens. And I'm almost a little disappointed Amari Cooper got traded at this point because, God, I would have loved seeing Jameis Winston getting the nod with Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku. And by the way, quietly, the Browns' offensive line is going to be fully healthy. Their Pro Bowl guard, Wyatt Teller, is officially off designated return. They also got their tackles back. Jameis Winston, baby. I'm excited for some Jameis. Hey, at least he'll throw 3 interceptions and 3 touchdown passes every week. Will be the 30 for 30 will live in infamy. But he's got the Ravens this week. And the Ravens, I know, are a dominant football team. Maybe it's because they're so dominant that they are susceptible to garbage time and all the extra yardage. But they have allowed a shit ton of fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. And can Jameis Winston be counted on for, let's say a bigger leagues? But what's your thoughts about Jameis this week?
Yeah, I'm a little more cautious on this one. I would actually prefer this matchup next week after we got to see a little more of Jameis and what he's doing right now. I mean, you have to go back 2 full years to where he had a good 3-game stretch of play. And the average in those 3 games back in the early 2022 with the Saints, 286, 4 touchdowns, and 5 picks in those 3 games. So that's not inspiring a lot of confidence 2 years later. I agree with you. This was a matter of time, frankly, one way or another. We were going to see Winston in there instead of Deshaun. But I don't trust him yet. So for me, he's not a streamer. I would prefer the Cousins or Knicks that we talked about before, rather than Winston.
We are getting deeper and deeper, if you haven't noticed. I think it's
Mhm.
priority order. Like, we're like, hey, Kirk Cousins may be available in 10-team leagues. Go scoop him up. Yeah, realistically, a lot of teams, like 12-team leagues, deeper benches, you're not going to have a shot at Kirk Cousins. Go Bo Nix. And then it's finally, hey, if you really want to get weird this week and have a little fun, you go Jameis Winston against the Ravens. Why not? Let's do it.
Yeah,
All right.
I will say though, I did take him in. Did pick him up overnight in one of my deeper leagues. I'm stashing him this week, but if this works out well, then I'm in a great position. If it doesn't, then I'm really there's no harm there.
So I do have a question though. So like some notable guys like Kyler Murray against the Dolphins, Justin Herbert against the Saints, I guess are kind of guys, maybe Dak Prescott on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. Are there any kind of like quote unquote stud quarterbacks you would sit for Jameis?
That I would sit for Jameis. No, probably not. Maybe Matthew Stafford, perhaps. I wouldn't say he's a stud quarterback, but I think they are in, if I recall, Minnesota. Yeah,
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Yeah, well, actually, it's in LA, but yeah,
LA?
Against Minnesota. I mean, if I'm counting on Stafford, I may sit someone like him to take a chance on Winston, but the other quarterbacks, I would play Murray over him. Tua's even out there, potentially a starter, and I would rather have Tua than Jameis as well. So, assuming he plays. So there's a lot of quarterback options this week because there's no buys. So I don't think you have to, rush and play your new toy right away, even though it is a great matchup, frankly, for a quarterback. But I think you can wait and see what this looks like. Cooper's not there anymore, so that hurts a little bit. But wait and see what this looks like, and then make your decision, moving forward in the bye weeks that are coming up.
All right, let's shift down the tight end streamers this week, folks. And so, and honestly, on the back end for me, like I look at a lot of times, like fantasy points allowed to tight ends is a little bit of a miss. My feeling is that not every team utilizes the tight end. So when you just look at fantasy points versus the tight end position, it could be skewed because you might face three offenses that don't use a tight end. And so you're going to look stronger. So I've created some expectation modeling on the back end at Razzball to see like what is the expected fantasy points for tight ends versus what they actually get. And so when I was looking through that data, there's still a lot of fun possible tight end streamers this week. And one of the guys that I actually like a lot is the Carolina Panthers tight end, which, by the way, I don't really like as much anymore because now it's Bryce Young versus Andy Dalton. Now, granted, it would have been sweet to see this happen because he is facing the Broncos defense, and the Broncos are right now today, the Broncos give up and of course my screen is all.
Yeah, fifth most targets is what I have.
Yeah, but they're 16th in fantasy points. Yeah, sorry. I'm using my funky screen right now, so just give me 1 second here. All right, 12th most fantasy points to tight ends of the season, but expectation modeling has a much higher. I know Sanders we could probably just move on. You're not interested in the Bryce Young thing, are you, on the road?
No, I'm not. I was, just in a vacuum. I am interested in Sanders. I mean, targets have been increasing, and he's getting red zone targets, with Andy Dalton. But yeah, really, puts a cold water on it when Bryce Young back in the fold. There's other tight ends who are starting to level out, and you're probably going to go that way rather than take a risk with Sanders.
Yeah, I agree. We'll put this one on hold. He is starting to get more targets, 5+ targets in 3 straight games. But I honestly, the Bryce Young experience on the road in Denver, I'm probably just looking at the Broncos defense this week. All right. The next one is Jonnu Smith. So the Smith has the Cardinals DST. Now, I do believe this is just my opinion, that Jonnu benefited from the fact that they had a bunch of inexperienced backup quarterbacks. And so they basically used Tyreek Hill and Waddle as, they're not going to get the ball to them deep. They couldn't, horizontally, defenses were not letting them do that stuff. So they shut down those guys. But Tua being back, I think will change the dynamic of this offense to go back to Hill and Waddle. But that being said, Jonnu Smith has really carved out a really nice role for himself. Does have a plus matchup against the Cardinals DST. The Cardinals are middle of the pack in fantasy points allowed to tight ends, but 8 and 7 targets the last 2 weeks. With Tua back, are you willing to take a shot on Jonnu Smith?
Yeah, ironically, that's really good. The key. I look at our tools and they really fall right in line with what you said. It is a good matchup for him versus the Cardinals. So I dug a little deeper, went back to the weeks with Tua in versus Jonnu Smith with Tua out. And again, not a large sample size, but Jonnu's been getting more targets with Tua out than he did when Tua was playing. So is that a trend yet? Well, there's not enough data to say it is, but that's something to keep an eye on. Logic says, he, especially, coming off his injury, his concussion injury, quick passes, get the ball out, before he gets hit. You would think that the tight end would play a role in that, but we'll talk a little bit about the running backs in this matchup. I'm a little skeptical that that Jonnu is going to keep it going or keep that upward trajectory with Tua back in. I'm just a little skeptical. So if I have a better option out there, I'm not taking the chance. But we know how tight ends are, and if you just don't have, or maybe you have Sanders like we just talked about, that maybe lean towards Jonnu Smith. But generally, I'm gonna look for a better option.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the first two kind of got blown up a little bit over the last few days. I don't think I'm going to be starting Jonnu or Sanders until I see what goes on with Bryce and Tua.
Yeah.
The next guy is also an interesting one because coming out of the Monday Night Football, Will Dissly, better known as Big Montana. This boy came out with 11 targets, 81 yards, and 8 receptions on Monday Night Football. I think an underrated thing that a lot of people didn't know is that Hayden Hurst, who shares the workload with him, was out last week with an injury. If Hayden Hurst is out again, boy, oh boy. I mean, Will Dissly will play against the Saints. Saints are middle of the pack against the tight end. But when they face notable tight ends, Travis Kelce, 9 for 70, Dallas Goedert for 10 for 170, they are getting roasted when they face a notable pass-catching tight end. Was there something there? If Hayden Hurst is out, is Will Dissly a fun dart throw this week?
Yeah, and that is the key, and that's exactly what I found. With Hurst out, he was targeted, and he was. You could even say he was a focal point. But when Hurst was in there, he's only averaged in 3 targets per game. For the previous 5 games, before this last one. So I think that's really the key. You said that the matchup with the Saints is, they're more middle of the NFL and in some of those categories versus tight ends, but there is potential there. You just shared a few examples that tight ends have had really good games against the Saints. There's no reason to suggest that the Saints have fixed those problems. So yeah, if Hurst is out, then Dissly would be one that I would maybe lean to. But if he's in, then no, I'm probably expecting to go back to that workload that he had previously.
So the last one is Cade Otton playing against the Falcons with all the depleted injuries to the Bucs. And I think the question really now is not whether or not he is streamable. I think the question is, can you start him over a quote-unquote stud? Like, honestly, I think Cade Otton is one of the best plays on the week. Not only is the matchup okay, but I don't think Jalen McMillan and Shepard are going to be getting the targets that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin got. So the question is, if you were able to scoop up Cade Otton this week, are you going to start him over guys like Jake Ferguson versus the 49ers, for example? Insert other stud here. What's your thoughts about that for Cade Otton?
Yeah, he's definitely in the mix. With what they have left in Tampa, there's not a clear slot receiver that we see. We talked about Shepard potentially filling that role, and he probably will. But Cade Otton works that middle really well, and he's probably the biggest beneficiary. And we saw it last week. Season high 76 snaps, season high 11 targets, season high 8 receptions, season high 100 yards. So he's going to be targeted. There's no question about that. And if you're especially in a PPR league, what's the best thing you can have for a starting tight end is guaranteed targets. So yeah, give me Cade Otton this week. I probably will play him over someone like a Ferguson because they came off their bye, but they were pretty dreadful before. Have they figured it out? Maybe we need to see a week for that Cowboys offense to see if they figured it out before we're going to trust Ferguson again. So Cade Otton would make a nice replacement.
Sam Laporta or Cade Otton?
I got to go Sam Laporta.
Okay. Trey McBride.
Trey McBride against the Dolphins defense. That's an interesting one. McBride hasn't really been busting it out. That might be. I think McBride's probably going to get the start most of the time, but that's close. I would say that's close.
Okay. All right, let's shift on. We got a couple of questions.
Brock Bowers. I would start him over Brock Bowers.
No shot.
I would.
Brock Bowers, the Raiders tight end playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the best matchup for tight ends.
You're right. Yeah. Okay.
He might be the number one tight end of the week.
You're right. You didn't need too many words to convince me to take me off of that one. So never mind. I withdraw that.
All right. Cool. I was like, what? That might be my number one tight end of the week.
And
you'll probably be right.
Too.
All right. Let's talk about some of this. We got drop all my Dalton for Winston in Superflex League. I'm ready for the Jameis experience. Love it. Epic fail. Yep. Tyler joins the show again. Love or Hurts and Ferguson or Otton. Honestly, it's kind of funny that we just talked about this. Mm-hmm. I think my start of the week this week has to be Jordan Love against the Jaguars. I mean, it's insane. And then for the tight end call, I honestly like the Cowboys. I understand the 49ers offense is banged up, but for some reason, the 49ers just have the Dallas Cowboys number and they're in San Francisco.
Yeah.
That has not been good historically for the Cowboys. And I know the San Francisco defense isn't like amazing against that. They're average. I think I'm going to take the upside of Cade Otton this week. I'm going to go Love and Otton. What's your thoughts?
Same for me. Love and Otton. Yep.
Epic fail. He says, damn, I wish I had the luxury of sit Bowers anyway. You don't wish that. You don't wish that, epic fail. That would be an epic fail. I honestly think you're going to love having Brock Bowers this week in that matchup. All right, let's jump over to the RB flex spots before we close out the show. Some notable RBs that have really good matchups this week that might not always be auto starts. Some of these guys have kind of emerged a little bit. Of course, Javonte Williams, currently on the season, slipping into the back half of the RB2 discussion after his big performance last week, has the Carolina Panthers. Is it as simple as you got to get Javonte into your lineups this week? And if so, what are some notable, top 24 running backs you would start him over, you think?
Yeah, ironically, what I look through our tools with him, of course, we know that Carolina allows the most fantasy points to running backs, but they're one of the best in limiting running back targets, ironically. So the pass catching running backs, they've actually done a pretty good job in limiting those. So, so you look at Javonte, and he's really not catching the ball all that much. He's finally coming around, and he's doing it more with his legs than with his pass catching. So that kind of eliminates that, ray of good hope for the Panthers, perhaps. But our adjusted line yard metric, which you've talked about before, Bobby, we have in the background. This is the best matchup of the week for running backs, and you've got to play that. He's a really good flex this week. He does have a couple tough matchups coming up. So, if he strings a couple really nice weeks together, you still need to be cautious moving forward. But for this week, he's definitely a flex play.
Yeah, this could be the sell high after this week, right? After he
Yeah,
plays
agreed.
Carolina Panthers, you get him in your lineups, you play him. I guess the better question is, would you start him over Nick Chubb this week against the Ravens?
I would, yes. It was nice to see, Matt texted me and let me know Chubb got in the end zone. I don't have Chubb anywhere in my lineups, but it was good to see that. That's one that just really warms the heart. I, love Nick Chubb and happy to see him back on the field and get in the end zone. But, for as far as a fantasy starter, you've got in a flex, we're talking flex plays. No, Javante's the right play this week.
What about Tony Pollard playing against the Detroit Lions this week?
Wow, that's a interesting thought. I mean, Detroit is very friendly to offenses, and you assume there's garbage time opportunities for someone like Pollard, so that makes that somewhat attractive. I think I'm still leaning towards Javante, just for the reasons that we talked about, at home versus depleted and frankly probably demoralized Panthers team. So I'm probably going to go Javante, but I do like I do like the other option there. In fact, I might even look at that as for my DFS play. So before I write my DFS article, I might look at the Pollard and perhaps, I mean, his DraftKings and FanDuel costs probably will be pretty cheap, and that might be actually a nice GPP play to consider. So I'm going to look into that one more.
A little contrarian play here,
That's
folks.
right.
Don't run from the matchup. Take the garbage time check downs. Make sure you watch if Tyjae Spears is out of the lineup too. That could help a lot. Running back number 2 we want to talk about that's a flex is going to be J.K. Dobbins. Kind of got off to a really hot start and kind of leveled off a little bit. He had a good week 2 weeks ago, but kind of the last few haven't been necessarily great. Gets a smash spot against the Saints. The Saints allow the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. Is there anything in the numbers that suggests you should maybe not be overly excited for JK?
Yeah, a little bit actually. You like you said, he got off to a hot start and has been pretty average since. Our adjusted line yard metric has this as about a mid-tier play. When you look at defensive targets, our defensive targets allowed tool, and again, it's a mid play. The Saints have actually limited, they're about NFL average roughly in limiting targets to running backs, and those. So he does get a few targets per game, gets a few receptions. He is catching them. He's averaging about 3 targets per game the last 4, but I'm not expecting him to do a lot of damage there. It's going to have to be, on the ground, and he just not looking like the DK that came out of the gates, for whatever reason. Coming off the bye, he's maybe the rest help, but I probably will play him just for the fact that, I probably don't have a better option, frankly. In a flex spot, especially in a half PPR league where, you don't get those wide receiver bonus, for receptions. But he's probably more on the border for me of either playing or sitting. So I'm not all in on JK.
I'm in. I got him as an RB2 probably this week. I'll probably have him in most lineups at home against a backup quarterback. I know Spencer Rattler excites a lot of people, but to be honest with you, so far, I mean, it's not even his fault. No Chris Olave, no Rashid Shaheed. I mean, that's tough for a backup rookie quarterback to really step up when he doesn't have the best players on the roster playing. So honestly, if Olave might be back this week, we know Shaheed is out. I honestly think that the game flow being at home, I think the Chargers will have plenty of opportunities to get him touches. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I will add too, from our home road tool, he has been pretty even, so there's not really a lean one way or the other. But if you go back to his home games this year and pair that with a relatively weak running back defense, which the Saints are, that kind of ties back to his week 1 where he had 135 and a touchdown. So
yeah,
there is a little bit of hope there. Again, I don't know if I would have him as a running back 2, but that might convince me to give him a flex. Give them the flex.
The other home game was against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are the toughest defense against running backs this
Exactly.
year.
That's
And by
exactly,
far. So
exactly right.
he's got something. I honestly think that this is it. Like the game flow should be the receiving core for the Chargers a little banged up too. So I'm in on JK for this week. All right, the last one I want to talk about is the Miami Dolphins running backs. Now, Tua is it as simple as Tua is back and everything is going to be all right? Tell me, Derek, whisper in my ear, my headset right now. Everything's going to be all right for the Dolphins because Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane have not necessarily been great with the backups. Now they get the Cardinals. Cardinals are a decent matchup for running backs. Cardinals are, where are they? 14th in fantasy points allowed. Yeah. Is it all good?
If we had Bob Marley music, we'd be playing it right now. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Everything's gonna be all right. Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah. I think, we've been waiting. Anyone with Dolphins players, frankly, are kind of waiting for this opportunity to get Tua back. Mostert's back. Achane's healthy. So yes, this is. I mean, which one do you play? I mean, they both shared almost an even split of rushes last week, but they both produced. So you put Tua back in there, open up the offense a little bit more. Waddle and Hill become viable again, and it opens it up for Achane and Mostert. So our adjusted line metric suggests this is not one of the best matchups, but again, you put that offense, you spread it back out, the running lanes will be there. Yeah, I like the upside for both Achane and Mostert this week. And just as a footnote, the next 6 games for the Dolphins are all look to be, at least at this point, all really good matchups for these running backs. So
time to buy, baby.
It is time to buy. If you've been sitting on them, it's time to cash in.
I wonder I wonder what you can get from Mostert right now. I was in a shallow bench league and he's been dropped. So I put in a claim for him because I'm like, I could definitely use him as like an RB 3-4. I just wonder here's the trade questions I always ask, right? Because for me, you technically have to offer the better player this season to get Mostert, but you want the long-term upside of what Mostert could be, right? A top 12 to 15, maybe running back. We're not sure if the Dolphins, we haven't really seen the Dolphins healthy with Mostert, by the way, who missed games early when Tua was in and then Tua was out. So we don't really know if this is going to be last season Mostert at all. Even if he's 75% of that, he should return some RB2 value this year. So the question comes would you trade, a good question is guys like Javonte, J.K. Dobbins, would you trade those kind of players to get Raheem Mostert? Or on the flip side, are there certain wide receivers let's just pull up some borderline wide receiver, 2 wide receivers. Guys, let's say I don't want to say it. I guess I wouldn't say Higgins, Mari Cooper, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I definitely would. I don't think you would get Mostert for Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Michael Pittman, maybe, type player for that. Is there any interest in maybe those kind of players?
Yeah, if I had Chuba Hubbard right now, I would look to move him for Mostert. And the reason I say that, I mean, he's carved out a role. I don't think he's going to lose his role by any means, but at some point, Carolina is going to want to see what they have in their young players, and he's going to cut into Brooks is going to cut into Chuba's workload moving forward. And at this point, I'm looking, 3, 4, 5 weeks down the road, and 3, 4, 5 weeks down the road, I want Mostert. I don't want Chuba. So that would be a name that I would probably try to dangle out there right now, especially if Mostert's on a team that needs to win. Chuba may give him more of an opportunity to win right now, and I would much prefer to have Mostert in a few weeks from now.
So if you're in a pretty savvy league, I don't know if a lot of people are going to buy Chuba. They know Jonathan Brooks is lurking, right? I have Chuba in my biggest home league, and I don't have Jonathan Brooks, and I would love to trade Chuba early. But the question is, everybody knows if you're in a league with guys who actually care, they know Jonathan Brooks is lurking. And so I guess I don't even know like what a fair Chuba Hubbard. Like, yeah, sure. If you could get Mostert for
Yeah.
Chuba, great, do it. I would say do it in a heartbeat. I don't think that's going to happen though. I think, and honestly, if you're a Jonathan Brooks owner, don't you want Chuba Hubbard? Like, what's the offer for a Jonathan
Yeah.
Brooks owner, right? I mean, don't you want to handcuff him? Like,
I would. Yeah, exactly. And, with Brooks, I mean, we haven't seen him on the field yet.
I
And
know, yeah.
he's not going to come right out and get a full workload and just run away with it. I mean, he could, but it's not very likely. So, yeah, I would want that pair that those two up. If I was a Brooks owner, or if I was the Chuba owner, frankly, if there was a way to get Brooks for not an expensive return, then get that pairing, because one of them is going to be startable, in the weeks to come.
Let's do this exercise. We're live. We're doing it live.
All right.
Don't write it. We're doing it live. I am the Chuba Hubbard owner. The Jonathan Brooks owner in my league is now he's outside the playoffs. He's 5. We play 2 games a week. He's 5-9 through 7 weeks. Needs to start winning now.
Mm-hmm.
He has Jonathan Brooks, and some of the guys on his bench are Pittman, Lazard, Madison. Like, then his starters are like JT. He's got Wandale, Xavier Worthy, Justin Jefferson, Brian Robinson, Devin Achane. And it's like either they're too high up or they're not. Like, I don't really want Michael Pittman, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's probably wondering, going to bed at night, wondering, how am I 5-9? With this team, he's probably wondering that.
Well, he's got to change. He should have a better week. He's going to get JT back. I think he's going to bounce back. But he has Nico Collins. And the other thing I wanted to bring up to a lot of people, and I know this is not topical for what we're talking about, but like I think really good advice is, if you're a dominant team right now, if you're the 1 or 2 seed and you're a 5-2, 6-1, you should be looking at the teams in your league who have guys in IR spots like Nico Collins and seeing what you can trade for him.
That's right.
Like, honestly, the guys, if you're in the reversed role, if you're, 3-4 or 2-5, you can't sit around and wait for Nico to come back and then also get ramped up. So, like, I know it sucks sometimes to trade away a stud, but like if you're 2-5 right now, you can't wait 2, maybe even 3 more weeks for Nico.
That's
right.
You gotta win now.
You gotta win. So like, I don't know what a fair trade is. Like, would Devonta Smith be a fair trade for the stud team? If I'm a stud, I have Devonta Smith as my wide receiver 3 or 4. Would you trade him to get Nico and stash him? And if you're the other team, would you take that trade?
So if I was the trading team, I would definitely make that trade. I would stash Nico and send Smith. No question about that. If I'm the receiving team, that's probably not enough for me. I'm probably, if I'm gonna commit myself to shopping Nico, I need probably a little bit more consistent return than Devonta Smith.
DJ Moore?
DJ Moore may do it. Honestly, I might look for Cooper Kupp is coming back.
I don't know, man.
Amari Cooper is in a great spot now. DK. DK's
DK's
probably not going to play, so that's not going to help the losing team.
What about Brian Thomas?
That's an interesting play. Brian Thomas is really still probably a little bit under the radar, but he's a good fantasy player, and that might be if you have a hole at running back, and you need to win now, that might be a player to look for. I don't know if I'm trading Nico Collins for him. Maybe.
Brian Thomas is a receiver for the Jags.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm talking about Robinson. I'm sorry. Yeah, Robinson.
Yeah, Brian Robinson would be an interesting one, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely Brian Thomas. If you could land him right now, that's a good play. I would trade Nico to get Brian Thomas Jr. Yes, I would do that.
And that seems like a pretty reasonable.
And if you can afford, if you're 6-1 and you can afford, you're stacked at wide receiver, that Brian Thomas might be your flex play every week, then trade him for Collins. Yes. Yes. I would. That's a good trade.
Yeah. Man, I honestly, my one friend who's in the league with me, like I would love to make a Chuba trade, but like when I look at his roster, like sometimes I don't offer trades because I'm like, I don't like it for him because I'm like, I'm not going to give you more. Like I'm about to lose Chuba probably as like an RB2 because he's going to start splitting work more with
Right.
Jonathan Brooks. I know that. They know that. But at the same time,
There's still value.
It's still value, right? Because the other thing is, like you said, what's the ramp up period going to be?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a couple weeks? Are they going to, by the way, the Panthers season is over.
Yes.
There's no reason to rush the kid other than until he's 100%. So
yeah, I expect he's going to have the majority of the workload for the last 4, maybe 5 weeks of the season. But between now and then, he's going to be, ramping it up slowly if they're smart about it. And there's still plenty of time for Chuba to help someone get to the playoffs.
Chuba, you gorgeous. By the way, I love you. Doing so great this year. You're a sweet angel, and I love every second of you. Thank you for all of you've done for my fantasy teams. All right. Epic fail. A couple questions about Kobe Parkinson. Now, this one's interesting because Kobe Parkinson plays on Thursday night, and the Vikings defense, you beat them through the air. They're very susceptible to wide receivers. They do allow a decent amount of fantasy points to tight ends. That being said, with Cooper Kupp coming back, to be honest with you, I don't know if I'm excited for Kobe Parkinson. Is he an okay streamer? Sure. But I want to wait till the weekend. The problem is, Will Dissly, what if Hayden Hurst is active? Then we're not going to feel confident. We don't want to start Sanders with Bryce Young. I don't really care to do that. All his good productions come with Andy Dalton. So if these are your options, you might have to go Parkinson. I don't really have unless there's like a Jonnu Smith floating around out there that you could probably scoop up in the off the waivers. Dalton Schultz has been dropped in a lot of leagues. If you can get your hands on him, Lucas Kroll, let's go. Just that's my own little thing, but don't worry about it. He's a guy I was high on this offseason. He's finally getting some work, and I love it. I'm hoping he does good. He got 3 for 30 last week. Let's go, Lucas. I love it. But yeah, other than that, there really isn't that many exciting options. So what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with everything you just said. Parkinson's playable, but boy, you'd feel much better about it if they were playing on Sunday rather than Thursday night, because then you have a little more knowledge. But he's playable. But I don't know. I would have to be in a dire situation, I think, to play him tomorrow night.
My honest opinion, I'm rolling the dice. I'm waiting until the weekend. I'm going to hope that something happens where I get clear picture here, Epic fail. I would definitely roll the dice here. He said no Johnny, no Schultz. I mean, Jesus, what is your team? Tight end hungry out there? I mean, what is going on in this league? Model to me. But I would roll the dice.
And just to add, Kroll, how come he's not on the Vikings? I mean, that's a Vikings. Can you imagine the fan love for a guy like that, paired next to Hawkinson?
Love it. Love every second of it.
Just saying.
KJ Frederick, how you doing, man? Good to see you as always. Better full PPR flex, Jawan Jennings, Jordan Mason, or Jalen McMillan. I got to tell you, I'm going Jordan Mason. The Dallas Cowboys, you can run on them. The 49ers at home. Couple banged up guys in the passing game. I think Mason has a bounce back. He played the Chiefs last week, so no one's done well. So I'm going to go lean into Mason. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, same for me. Lean into Mason. It's a good matchup. He's got the workload. Yeah, there's no reason to get too cute with this one.
We got Jets defense or Chiefs defense this week based off matchup. So let's see. I don't have my
Jets are at New England, and the Chiefs are at the Raiders.
I'm probably going to say Chiefs, but let me just.
Yeah, that's going to be mine as well. I'm growing on Drake May. He's really growing on me. I know the Patriots overall are not a great team, but Drake May is growing on me. I think the Jets win the game, but I would prefer my defense to face Gardner Minshew and a Adams-less Raiders team than going against the Patriots. So yeah,
I agree.
Give me the Chiefs.
I'm going to go Chiefs as well there. All right. Last one before we close out this show, folks. Joseph Park. By the way, I don't recognize this name. Derek, do you?
No, I don't. Great to have you on.
Joseph, by the way, welcome to the show. We appreciate you jumping on. And by the way, make sure you join us every single Sunday because us and the rest of the team jump on for 2 hours before kickoff. We do a start-sit show. It's a lot of fun, a lot of craziness. We talk injuries, weather updates, everything you need to know up until kickoff, and we answer your questions live. So make sure you join us there as well. Make sure you hit the sub button. We appreciate you. We got a trade question here. Should I trade Garrett Wilson and Mooney for Higgins and Amari Cooper? Full PPR. I'm 6-1. I will look to package 3-for-1 in the future for a playoffs when I get some injured players back. Well, who are the injured players, Joseph? Are these guys, by the way, going to start for your playoff team when you're fully healthy? That's another great question. I do lean Higgins Cooper personally, especially if you're 6-1. And now remember, Cooper does have the toughest out wide schedule rest of season. But to be honest with you, I'm not overly concerned with Josh Allen. Garrett Wilson, I do like rest of season, even though he does have to compete with Devontae Adams. Mooney does seem a little up and down. He's got Nico and Pacheco. All right, interesting. So yeah, honestly, I'm okay with. I would definitely go Higgins and Cooper myself. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I think Joseph may have joined us last night because this question looks awful familiar. We had a discussion about that, and I think the other two guys went with you, Higgins and Cooper. I went Wilson and Mooney, and the guys were talking about being nervous about Garrett Wilson, with Adams there, but I'm really not. I think it really opens it up for him, and Mooney's a little up and down, but if you pair him against Cooper on the other side, like you said, Cooper, he is the number one and on a good Buffalo team, but he does have a really tough rest of season schedule. So I actually like the Wilson Mooney side of this, but it's close. I could live with the other side as well, but just my preference would be Wilson and Mooney.
I think with Joseph, what you got to do is join us on Sunday. And I think what you got to do is give us your entire lineup, because my mindset here is you're trading 2 for 2. And when you do this, a lot of times you're going to have weeks where you win the trade and some weeks where you lose the trade because you're trading 2 receivers for 2 receivers. You're not upgrading. If you were to trade Garrett Wilson and a running back to get these 2 receivers because you needed receiver help, I would understand the trade a little more. So my mindset is kind of and you're trying to deal Cooper, Olave, and Connor. By the way, I would never trade James Conner. He's an absolute stud. But I hear what you're saying. Connor and Cooper as a duo to upgrade to a wide receiver 1. Yeah, I think this is not a bad strategy, especially if you're 6-1 and you want to just load up for the playoffs. Honestly, I got to check my slot versus wide playoff schedule, but let's see.
Yeah, and while you do that, comment I made last night, and I'll make it again tonight. When you start multiplayer trades like this, you really need to deconflict your bye weeks coming up, because there are a number of really heavy bye weeks coming up. And now, especially a team that's 6-1, this is the time to get yourself set for those bye weeks, so you're not scrambling at the last minute with everyone else. Get yourself set now. Make those trades now, so you can just roll through those bye weeks into the playoffs rather than scrambling, trying to get those wins and get the players that they need to fill in the bye weeks. So keep an eye on that as well when you start looking at multiplayer trades. Make sure that you're setting yourself up moving forward, not just for the playoffs, but also to navigate through those bye weeks in between 10 and 14.
That's a heavy duo, right? Connor and. So yes, so basically you have K9, Connor, Pacheco as your 3 running backs, and then you got, it looks like Cooper, Olave, and Higgins as your 3 receivers. Oh no, I'm sorry. You have, well, no, you're saying you have Cooper. So you're saying, I don't really understand. So you say here you have Cooper, Olave, but then up here you're saying, should I trade Garrett Wilson and Mooney for them? I don't really have the time to dive into this crazy. But Joseph, I'm telling you right now, we have 2 hours before kickoff on Sunday. We'll have plenty of time to break it down. What I suggest is you get your entire lineup, throw it all together for us. We'll all break it down. There'll be 4 players on the team here. We can go into much deeper detail. It sounds like to me what you're trying to do is take your solid borderline RB2 1-2s and wide receiver 1-2s to get a stud. I understand that completely. Guys like CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, makes sense. Maybe Justin Jefferson types. If you could go poke around, I just don't know if Connor and Amari Cooper right now will get you Justin Jefferson, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe if the other team doesn't have an RB2 and James Conner will give them 7 points off their Chase Brown RB2 they're starting. So you're going to have to look through your league to identify the team that's weakest at RB2. But if you only have 3 RBs, you're going to need them, especially now because Pacheco's not even active. So K-Will misses games. Connor misses games. My mindset right here is unless you have 2 or 3 other really good running backs, you might want to stay pat because these guys are definitely been injury prone and missed games this season. So until Pacheco comes back, I don't feel comfortable trading Connor or K.
But he's doing the right thing though. At 6-1, you start, packaging up, looking for that stud player on it, especially like you said, on a team that's 3-4, 2-5 that need to win now. Those they might not love getting rid of their Justin Jefferson or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but if they're getting a package now that fills their holes and allows them to win and get back in the playoff hunt, an astute owner would make that move. You
might need to talk to this is the Nico Collins trade. You might need to poke around the Nico Collins owner. If the Nico Collins owner is 3-4, 2-5, this is the perfect opportunity to pounce on him. Obviously, if they're 5-2, 6-1 as well, they're not going to trade him either. But that's the perfect trade. Yeah. Nico has been proven to be a top 6 to 8 wide receiver, and he will definitely give you an upgrade. And you can sit on him while you're 6-1. So go check out the Nico Collins owner, see what his record is. That'd probably be my advice there as well.
Come back on Sunday with all your options, and we'll give you what we think is some of those those trades to pursue.
All right, yeah, that's all we got for the rest of the show. Derek, you want to tell the people we got upcoming at Razzball before we close out?
Yep, end of week, you'll see my DFS and prop bets plays of the week. Talk about some guys tonight that would probably fit really well once I'll start digging through the salaries and the numbers and ownership, and I'll try to give you a winning strategy, winning lineup for DFS and some props.
That's amazing. By the way, fantastic. Make sure you check out Derek, all his content as well. And make sure you join us this Sunday live on the Start Sit Show. We'll be doing a lot of fun stuff, injury updates, weather updates, everything you need to know up until kickoff. Make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube, jump over to IG and TikTok. And of course, make sure you jump over to razzball.com and check out everything you need to win your fantasy league. I want to thank my co-host once again, Derek Favret. Go follow Derek_Favret and myself at Bobby LaMarco on Twitter. Thank you, folks. We are out of here.